What if I told you the real reason you suck at sales has nothing to do with the script you're using, what you sell, or even how good your product is? I've trained thousands of salespeople. My own sales team has done over $100 million. And here's the truth. The reason why most salespeople don't perform is they don't understand the psychology of selling. So in this video, I'm going to share 3 subtle psychological sales techniques that you can use to influence your prospects to make them more likely to buy. The first principle is what I call the power of resolve. So this is the level of certainty behind your words. So think about 2 politicians arguing and screaming at each other, each absolutely certain that they're right. That's raw belief taken to an absolute extreme. Now, I'm not saying scream at your prospects. Obviously, we don't want to do that. But that unwavering certainty, that sound of belief, that's what we're after, just expressed differently. So when most sales rookies try to project certainty, they become hyped up sales energizer bunnies. So think about the stereotypical person who goes to like a Tony Robbins event. They're jumping up and down, they're screaming affirmations. That's kind of what most salespeople start doing. It's like a forced, canned, fake certainty. And maybe that's better than nothing, but we've been all sold to by people like that, and it's pretty off-putting, right? So true resolve is much different. It's quiet certainty. It's the composure that happens when success feels inevitable. So think about Michael Jordan, for example, during the legendary flu game in the '97 finals. He could barely stand, but with the game on the line, Jordan was the calmest person in the room, sick, exhausted, yet absolutely certain that if the ball's in his hands, they're taking it home. The key is a quiet type of confidence, an unwavering poise, a calm sense of certainty that success isn't a matter of chance, it's already done. So how do you develop this kind of resolve? Well, it comes from what I call inner alignment. When your beliefs aren't just intellectual, they're burned into your DNA through a real world experience. This is why most founders outsell their sales team, because when a founder sells, they're not just reciting rehearsed benefits, they're sharing their journey of identifying a real problem, creating a real product and a solution, absolutely from thin air. And because of that, their words have weight behind it because they've lived it. There's that inner alignment with that. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, that's great for founders, but if I'm a salesperson, how do I do the same thing? Well, the key is you need to become an absolute savage expert in the 1 to 3 core problems your product solves. So most salespeople get intimidated because they think they need to know as much as the founder or know everything and anything about their industry. But the good news is you absolutely don't. In almost every key scenario, your market and your prospects, they're bringing the same 1 to 3 problems on every single sales call. And if you master those specific problems, you'll naturally shift from being seen as a salesperson to being seen as an expert and ultimately a leader. Think about a plastic surgeon operating on a billionaire CEO. Who's in charge of that conversation? It's the surgeon, because even though the CEO is way more successful and probably does have more status in a lot of different contexts, in that specific context with that specific problem, it's no question who holds the power. It's the surgeon. And this is exactly what happens when you shift into the expert frame on your sales calls. The weight behind your words becomes undeniable because you've seen these exact problems and it feels like you've solved these thousands of times. So now that you understand the true power of resolve, let's talk about how to take that to the next level, because here's the thing. Even with perfect resolve and great certainty, you're still just somebody making claims, which is why you have to use our second principle, which is social proof. So think about the last time you're deciding where to eat in a new city. Okay, did you pick the empty restaurant or the one filled with locals? Well, that's social proof in action. So your brain is constantly looking for shortcuts to make decisions. And one of the most powerful shortcuts is modeling what other successful people have already done. It's like your brain thinks, well, it worked for them, it's probably gonna work for me. But what most salespeople do, and here's where they mess up, is they treat social proof like a sledgehammer instead of a scalpel. And so they'll hear their prospects mention a problem and immediately launch into a big sales pitch about their case study. Oh, here's this amazing case study, here's how we help them, blah, 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 blah. And it feels forced and very salesy, and the prospects don't trust it. So instead, a way more effective way and much more subtle is you need to seed your social proof. So during discovery, when a prospect brings up a challenge, you want to demonstrate that you not only understand that problem, but you've solved it before, okay? So here's how this will play out. Let's say your prospect says, hey, our biggest challenge right now is we're stuck working with small real estate agents in our agency, and we know the big money is getting in with high-end brokers, we just can't seem to attract them. So you might already have a client who you solved that problem for. A lot of people just jump right in and deliver their case study like a glorified sales pitch. Instead, you want to basically just seed it and relay the case study you have, but only the problem that they had, to the prospect. So how this would sound is, hey, I totally get it. Have you actually heard of X, Y, and Z agency? Well, we used to work with them and they came to us and they kind of said a similar thing. They said if they could replace their realtor clients with high-end brokers, they'd 4x their revenue overnight because of the higher LTV. So does that sound pretty similar to kind of what you're looking for? Okay, great. Well, I'll circle back to that later, but that just kind of rang a bell for me. Now, tell me a little bit more about what you tried so far. So you see what happened there. I didn't jump into how we solved it. All I did is create a curiosity, open the loop, and got them to lean in. And then when I'm pitching later on the call, after one of the key points of my pitch, I'm going to use the finished version of that case study to really drive the point home. So it'll sound something like this. Hey, well, a good example of this is, remember that agency XYZ I was talking about earlier? Well, the same exact process we're implementing with you is the same process that we use for them to get these higher value brokers. And what was really cool for them is once we got those in, because of the higher LTV like we talked about, it tripled the revenue in 90 days. So this approach is powerful because it creates what I call a status delta, which is the perceived difference in authority between you and your prospects. So think about it like this with a status delta. If you're driving down the street and a police officer steps in front of you and holds their hand up to stop, you stop. Not because they physically stopped you, because in that context, they have a much higher status delta and you defer to their authority. So the same thing happens in sales when you demonstrate you've helped somebody similar or even more successful than your prospect solve that exact problem your prospect is facing in the past. But what's crucial is it's gotta feel natural, like you're sharing insights from experience, not just giving a sales pitch. So now that you have the inner game master with Resolve and you're strategically demonstrating social proof that you can deliver results, there's still one more piece that really ties everything together, which is how you deliver your message, which brings me to my final point, which is vocal authority. Now, before I get into vocal authority, I wanna mention something. These psychological principles we're covering, sure, they're gonna help you close more deals or help your sales team scale up. But another thing that we use these with is really creating great marketing systems to generate leads on demand. So if you want help with either of those two problems, whether it's recruiting new salespeople, getting new setters and closers, or actually training up your existing sales team better, or developing and implementing a marketing system within your business, there's a video in the link in the description. It's 2 or 3 minutes. It'll tell you about how we work with clients, and you can see if that makes sense for you. Now, moving on to vocal authority is not just speaking louder or with more energy. It's built on 3 specific elements that all work together to command attention and convey leadership. So I'm going to tell you what these 3 things are, and it'll make a lot more sense when I bring it together with an example at the very end. Now, the first is your range of expression. So think back to our ancient ancestors. In prehistoric tribes, the leaders were easy to spot because they had the most dynamic, free-flowing, highest range of expression. So they took up space with not just their gestures and their presence and their body language, but also their voice, okay? Meanwhile, lower status members of the tribe learn to stifle their expression, and the reason why is because they don't want to challenge the alpha because they could get outcasted. So that's not just social dynamics, that's survival. And we've literally evolved to associate that dominant expression with leadership and authority. So here's the thing though, thousands of years later in modern sales conversations, that same instinct to stifle your expression is killing your influence. So when you restrict that range of expression that you have, you come across as uncertain and even untrustworthy. So the key to fixing this is to uncap your natural expression. So stop monitoring and restricting yourself. Stop being in your head, overanalyzing every single word that you're going to say before you say it, and be 1,000% present with your attention fully rested on your prospect, okay? Now, the second key element is how you use pauses and shifts in your cadence. So what you don't want is a monotone pace throughout everything that you say. It just sounds like this the entire time, okay? The key is you want a variance between slowing down and emphasizing certain words, speeding up, using pauses, using silence as well, sometimes just shutting the hell up. And the more you can vary your cadence, the easier it is to hold your prospect's attention, especially in your pitch, okay? Now, the third key point is inflection, right? So there's 3 types of inflection that can completely change how your message is received. There's upward inflection, where your voice goes up at the end, like you're asking a question, which subcommunicates uncertainty and seeks approval, okay? There's neutral reflection, where it stays level. This works for just stating facts and building rapport. And then there's downward inflection, where your voice goes down at the end, which conveys authority and has certainty. So let me show you exactly what I mean. I'm gonna tie all of these elements together in an example. So imagine I'm framing a sales call in the very beginning and I sound something like this, which is obviously really bad. Hey, so what I really found to work best on these calls is understanding your business, the mechanics of it, how it works, and ultimately what's keeping you from feeling where you want to be. And once we figure out that, I can give you some of my thoughts, and if it makes sense, we can definitely go into what you have going on over here and how that would work for you if you want to talk about. Okay, so obviously that's bad, and I almost can't even do it because it's hard for me at this stage to, number one, I'm stifling the expression, I'm monotone all the way through, I'm not varying any cadence, and then on top of that, I'm implementing a lot of up talk. Okay, that was almost uncomfortable for me to do. So that was obviously very bad. What it should sound like is something like this. Hey, so what I really found to work best on these calls is first diving into understanding your business. Okay, so the mechanics of it, how it works, and ultimately, what do you feel like are the constraints that are keeping you from being where you want to be? Now, once we get clarity there, I can share with you some of my thoughts, and if it makes sense, we can definitely go on to what we have going on over here if that's something you want to talk about. But if not, I can point you in the right direction too. So, that sound good? All right, so you see how that was just natural, but it's a wider range of expression. You can notice I did a lot of pausing, okay? So I would like get to a word and almost stop on the word. And then sometimes I be going a little bit quicker. Sometimes I slow it down, okay? And there was no upward inflecting tonality. It was downward or neutral the entire time. So it's pretty obvious which one is better. So when you combine these three principles together, resolve, which is the certainty, social proof, and the vocal authority, you become way more persuasive, even if you're using the same script as another closer. And this is really how two closers can use the same script and get entirely different results. So now that you understand these psychological principles, you might be wondering, well, what is the best script to use, or what is the best sales process to use? So if you want to know the end-to-end sales process that my team has done over $100 million uses, click this video right here and it'll take you to the full end-to-end process.